So the last and the most important principle here we have is the isolation. So the isolation ensures that concurrent transactions do not interfere with each other. So basically isolation comes into picture when we have multiple simultaneous transactions happening. So to understand this, we'll take a simple example and then we will see what are the different isolation levels present in a database and how they differs. So for example, let's say there are two people, person 1 and person 2. Both are connected to a same bank account and they are trying to do a transaction at the same time. So let's say the person 1 is trying to buy a t-shirt of 500 rupees and the person 2 is trying to buy a shoe of 1000 rupees. And both the people are trying to do this transaction at the same time. Now in this scenario, when there is a single bank account and two people are doing two different transactions on the same bank account at the same time. So in this case, now let's try to understand how the behavior changes with different isolation levels. So we will see this practically. So first, let's start with the repeatable reads. Okay, so to understand the repeatable reads, here I have started two different sessions of the MySQL so that we can run two parallel transactions. So here first, let's check what is the current isolation level. So for that, we can use the command select at transaction isolation. Okay, so here it's by default repeatable read. Now we'll understand what does this mean. So before that, we need to set the auto commit to false. So what do we mean? Let's say if we execute any update command on any of the table, then that update will get immediately applied onto the table. But if we want the update statement or the command should get applied only when we explicitly commit it, then we need to set the auto commit to false. So to check the current status, we can just use this command, that is select at auto commit. So here you can see it's by default set as 1 identifies as true. So we need to set it as false. So for that we can use set auto commit equal to 0. Okay. So now if we check, it will be false. So we need to do the same in the other session as well. Let me just copy this. Okay. So now if we check this, just copy this. So now here also we have set it to false. Okay. So now here I have a simple table that we just saw, that is the account table with just two fields, that is account ID and the amount, and it has only one row, that is account ID 1 with amount as 1000. Okay, the same we can check here as well. Okay, so now let's start the transaction. Let's try to imitate what we just discussed, where two persons trying to do a transaction simultaneously on the same account. Okay, so here let's start the transaction. Okay, let me just do the same here as well. Okay, so the transaction has been started. Now here let's do some update operation on one of the transaction, and then we'll see what is the behavior in the other one, and then we'll try to understand how repeatable read is helping here. So for that, let me just do an update where right now the account ID 1 has amount as 1000. So let me just do a deduction of 500 where the person 1 is buying a t-shirt. So for that, let me run an update command. Update account set amount equal to 1. Okay, so now we have updated it. So now if we check the balance, it will be 500, right? So now usually ideally we should expect the same on the other session as well, right? So now if we check over here, we'll see that the amount here still it is showing as 1000, right? Because now within this transaction the reads will be consistent. Okay, so whatever changes we are doing in the other transactions that are particular to that transaction until they are committed. Okay, so now if however many times I just read it, it will be showing me the same amount which it got in the beginning of the transaction. So that is exactly what repeatable reads is about. So we will get the repeated reads which it was there at the beginning of the transaction. Okay. So that's about the repeatable reads. Now, if we go a step ahead, that is, let's say if this transaction or the person to also try to do some update. Okay. So in that case, now what will happen? So if I just run this command over here, okay, where I will just deduct 1000 from this account. Okay. So by default, what will happen? You can just guess for a second. Okay. So now let me run this. So you will see that it will get into a waiting state where this transaction will now wait until this another one gets committed. Okay. So repeatable reads only help us to get the same data within one transaction, but it will not help us to execute multiple transactions at the same time until the other one is committed. So that is where the second isolation level comes into picture that we'll discuss next. Okay. So now how does this will get completed? So it will be in a waiting state until this transaction gets committed. So let me now just commit it. Okay. So as soon as I commit this, it will throw error because we have applied a constraint on the amount, that is it cannot be less than 0. So if we try to deduct 1000, then it will go into minus 500. So that's a wrong, or that will break the constraint. So that's the reason it will throwing us the error. Okay. So now this has been committed. That's the reason this thread has been released and it got executed automatically. But I hope you understood what is repeatable read, where within a transaction, though the other transaction has made a change in the main table, but within that transaction we'll get the same reads. So next, let's discuss the read committed. Okay, so let's next understand the next isolation level, that is read committed. So let's check what is the current isolation level. So currently it is repeatable reads. So we need to update this to read committed. So for that we need to run this command, that is set session transaction isolation level as read committed. Okay. So now if you check this, now the isolation level has been changed to read committed. So let's execute the same in the another session. So if we check, okay, so now in both the sessions, the current isolation level is read committed. Now to understand this, let's start the transaction. Okay, so let's do the same in another session. So we have started the transaction in both the sessions. Now let's check what is the current balance. So current balance is 1000. Let's do the same over here. Okay, so now let's update the balance in the first transaction, and then let's see what's the behavior in the another transaction when the isolation level is read committed. So here update count ID equal to 1. Okay, so now we have updated the amount. If we check here, we are getting the updated amount, but if we check here, it will be still reading the older data, right? Now, how it is different from the repeatable reads. So here, even now, if I commit this, and now if I check over here, you will see that I'm getting the committed value, right? So basically here it is reading the latest committed value, but in the repeatable read, it was still reading the same value which it has in the initial of the transaction. Only when the transaction is committed, then it is going to read the latest data. But with the read committed, even before the transaction is committed, it will be reading the latest commit data. So that's the difference between repeatable read and the read committed. Okay. Okay. So next let's understand the other isolation level, that is read uncommitted. So first of all, if we check the current isolation level, it is read committed. So we need to update this to read uncommitted. Okay. So the moment we update it, we also need to commit this as well, so that for this session, it will take effect. So for that, let me first commit it. And now if we check the isolation level, it is read uncommitted. So let me do the same over in the another session as well. Okay, let me commit this. Okay. Now let's start the transaction and let's understand the behavioral difference with the read uncommitted. Okay. So let me start the transaction in the other session as well. Okay. So now let's check the current balance. Okay. So current balance is 500. Let me just check it in the other session as well. It should be same. Okay. Now let me update over in one of the transaction and let's see the behavior in the other transaction. So to update this, update equal to 1. So now we have updated it. And if you check the balance now, it is 400. So till this point, if in the other two isolation levels, if we check the balance in the second transaction, then it would have been read the earlier balance which was there initially when the transaction has started. But now as the isolation level has been set to uncommitted, so due to that, if I read the data over here before the transaction has been committed in the transaction 1, then you will see that I'm getting the uncommitted data, right? So this is a difference between read committed and read uncommitted. So in the read committed, I was able to see the updated data only once this transaction has been committed. But here I'm getting to read the data even before the transaction has not yet committed. But in case of read repeatable, I was unable to read the updated data until my second transaction is completely committed. So only once it is committed, then I was able to read the final data. So that's the difference level of reads we get with the different isolation levels. Okay, I hope you are able to differentiate between the repeatable read, read committed, and now this is read uncommitted. Okay, so next let's understand the final isolation level, that is serializable. And then finally we will discuss in which business case scenario we'll be using the different isolation levels which are suitable for that scenario. Okay. Okay. So next let's discuss the last isolation level, that is the serializable. So here serializable is the most strictest form of isolation among all of them, because it doesn't even allow the reads within the two simultaneous transactions. So what do I mean here? Let me just show you with an example. So here, first of all, let's set the current isolation level to serializable. Okay, so let me do that over here as well. And let's commit this. Okay, now let's start the transaction. Let me do that over here as well. Okay, so now within we have started two different transactions simultaneously. Now here, let me just update a row. For that, let's check what's the current balance. Okay, so here let me just update it. Update account set amount. Okay, so we have successfully updated this, and now we are in the middle of this first transaction. Now in this case, if you remember or if you observe, in all the previous isolation level, even when we have updated something in the first transaction, we were able to read the data in the other transaction. So now if we try to read the data over here, you'll see that it will go into a blocking state or a waiting state, where now the isolation level is serializable. It's completely blocks, like now the transactions needs to be completed in a queue. So we cannot do any operations within this transaction until this first transaction is completed. So only when we commit this transaction, then only we can perform any read or write in the second transaction. So this is the strictest form of isolation, where we will not be able to even read if any other transaction is already going on until that is committed. Okay, so now if I commit this, and we'll see that this is automatically got released and we were able to read the data over here. Okay, so now as we understood all the different levels of isolation in the SQL database, these isolations are common across any SQL databases. Okay, next let's discuss what are the practical implementation of these isolation levels, like in which scenario we should be preferring the different isolation levels. Okay, so now coming to the use case of these isolation levels in the production system. First of all, here we need to understand the different settings. So here, firstly, we can set the isolation level globally for the database. So this will definitely depend on the overall use case or the business scenario that we may not be able to conclude at this point of time, but we can able to discuss couple of scenarios on the per session basis, or for the per operation, or for the per requests. So those can be discussed at this moment. So for example, if we consider read committed isolation level, so this is a default isolation level for the systems like Oracle or PostgreSQL, and some of the very common use cases where this isolation level will be set for a transaction or for a operation will be like looking for the current stock of any product. For example, let's say there is a sale on Amazon and people are trying to buy the latest iPhone. Okay, so let's say iPhone, and let's say the total quantity available is 100. Okay, and the total number of people trying to buy the iPhone at this moment is 1000. Okay, so there are 1000 people trying to buy iPhone where the quantity is 100. So now in this case, when these many people try to log in and when they are on the page to buy the iPhone, like everyone will, the buying decision or the behavior will be different for every people. So some of them will be seeing the feature, some of them people will be seeing the price or the reviews, or some of them will be directly going to buy. So the time will differ when the people will try to buy this. So by the moment the person will click on buy option or the payment option, he should be seeing, or he or she should be seeing the latest quantity or the available stock, right? If we are using the other isolation levels, then we will be having the issue to get the latest or the current available stock. But if we are going with the read committed as isolation level, then whenever the person moves from one page to another, let's say when he clicks on the buy option and he goes to the payment option, he'll be seeing the latest stock, whether it is present or not. If it is not present, then he'll not be going ahead with buying that. And if it is present, he'll be able to buy it. Similar similar thing is observed in the IRCTC ticket booking system, where we try to book the ticket by seeing that the ticket is available. But by the moment we go to the payments page, we'll see that the tickets sometimes goes out of stock or the tickets will not be there. So that is possible because the isolation level is set to the read committed, where we will be getting to read the latest committed data from the database. And similar thing can be observed in the banking system, where for example there is a vendor or a merchant who is receiving frequent payments. In that case, if the vendor or the merchant tries to check the balance, then he should be able to see the latest balance of his account, where he is receiving the frequent payments, right? So that is possible only when the isolation level is set to read committed. Okay, so I hope you are able to understand in which conditions or scenario read committed is important. Okay, next, coming to the read repeatable. So read repeatable is as we saw, it is a default isolation level for the database like MySQL. Okay, and typical use cases it has is like for example, generating the stock price reports at a regular interval of time. For example, let's say the market opens at 9:30 and closes at 3:30. In that case, let's say we have created a system that is going to create the report at 9:30, then at 12:30, and then let's say at 3:30. Okay, when the market closes. So we want the exact price at these times. We don't care whether what is the price after 1 minute or after 10 seconds. We just want the exact price at this point of time. So at this point of time, whatever the transaction starts, that price we want. In that case, in such scenarios, we can use the repeatable reads, or that is also used for a operation or the transaction where the balance is getting transferred from one account to another account, right? So within that transaction, the balance should be consistent until the transaction is committed. Okay, so in such condition or in such operation or in such session, the isolation level must be set to read repeatable. Okay, I hope you are able to get the difference here, in which case we should be going with read committed and in which case we should be going with read repeatable. Now coming to the serializable, it is likely not used in any of the major production systems, but it is used in systems where the transaction value is very high. For example, on an e-commerce platform where they are selling a luxurious car or diamonds, where every transaction they want to be serialized, where they do not want to interfere any other transaction. So, and where we are expecting very less number of traffic or very less number of people who are trying to interact over there, or on the platforms like government websites where properties are getting transferred. So in such conditions, we do not want to interfere with any other transaction. In such scenarios or in such operations, serializable is the isolation that is preferred. And then coming to the read uncommitted, this is mostly not used in any of the production system, used only for the performance experiments or read-only analytics snapshots. So mostly the first three isolation levels are likely to be used, and in that mostly the first one and the second one are most probably used in the major production systems. So I hope you are able to get and understand these all different isolation levels and where they are used in the production system.